করেছেন জি
জি স্যার জয়েন করেছি।
জি আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
কেমন আছেন আপনি? ভালো আছেন স্যার?
আছি আলহামদুলিল্লাহ, ভালো আছেন?
জি আছি আলহামদুলিল্লাহ, থ্যাংক ইউ।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rubaba Navarafai, of France-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry. A very warm welcome to you all to the webinar on post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities for entrepreneurship and employment in the context of current status of skill development and readiness for fourth industrial revolution. The third episode of the three-series webinar organized in collaboration with Bangladesh Investment Development Authority. To begin this webinar, may I invite the President of CCIFB and the moderator of the program, Syed Mahmoudul Haq, to commence this webinar with his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruoba. Ruoba is the Executive Director of France-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. As you know, this year has been exceptionally a difficult one for all of us. The unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted our economic activities, retarded growth, caused widespread unemployment, and severely affected the health and well-being of countless number of our people. We have the challenge to gainfully employ in agriculture our returning migrant workers and local workers employed in the cities who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic. Besides, the ongoing pandemic has also prompted all sectors, public and private, to seek online or digital solutions for all aspects of businesses, be it for purchase or sale of necessaries, consulting doctors, conducting meetings, or holding classes and exams. Some of the industries are also seeking for automation of their factories and plants, replacing man by machines. All these are speeding up the entry into the fourth industrial revolution, or 4IR. And we are now witnessing increasing use of different tools of 4IR. From France-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, we decided to organize a series of 3 webinar consultations to consider how we can mobilize our collective strength and initiatives to overcome the challenges that we are facing as a consequence of the pandemic. First 2 of these consultations were held on August 29, 2020 and September 19, 2020. In the first of the webinar consultations, we considered how to leverage promotion of entrepreneurship and skill development in the agro-processing sector to overcome the adverse impacts of COVID-19 on Bangladesh economy. In the second consultation webinar, we considered the various aspects of promoting and supporting e-commerce as a possible way of sustained increase in production and trade, promotion of entrepreneurship and job creation. For the last and final of a series of webinar consultations today, we decided to focus on various aspects of fourth industrial revolution. We have seen how China, South Korea, and Taiwan have been successful in managing the fallout and mitigating the risk of COVID-19 by using artificial intelligence, big data, and other emerging technologies of 4IR. Today, we'd like to see how the same tools of 4IR could become important instruments for us to unlock a process of sustained growth and development, rapidly increasing production and trade, employment generation, and suitably adapted and applied to promote entrepreneurship. We hope that our webinar consultations today would provide us the platform to have forward-looking discussions in this regard. We are delighted to have His Excellency Mr. M.A. Manan, Member of Parliament, Honorable Minister for Planning, Government of Bangladesh, as our chief guest. We are grateful to him for sparing his valuable time to join us. I also like to thank Mr. Mohammad Siajul Islam, Executive Chairman, Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, for kindly joining us in organizing this consultation webinar and many others for their suggestions, inputs, and concrete ideas, which made it possible for us to organize this webinar. We have an immense group of panelists drawn from academia, industries, commerce, and government to enrich our discussions. I welcome you all and hope that with your most valuable contributions, we shall have a good round of discussions, which hopefully would produce rewarding and positive, actionable outcomes. I also like to acknowledge the participants in today's webinar of the officials from Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, members of France-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Business France, Business Promotion Council, the Public-Private Partnership Platform of different key industries and the Ministry of Commerce, Bangladesh Shrimp and Fish Foundation, Bangladesh Brand Forum, and the School of Business and Entrepreneurship of Independent University, Bangladesh, the Center for Entrepreneurship, Innovations, and System Development under Chittagong Independent University. I also like to thank the participants from home and abroad, including those who have connected this webinar through Facebook, YouTube, Fashion Express, Dhaka Tribune, Bonik Barta, and Bhorer Kagoj. I'd like to inform our participants from home and abroad that you have an option to text your questions in the messenger option of Zoom and Facebook, and our speakers will try to respond those accordingly. Now we'd like to begin our webinar today, this evening, with the keynote presentation. Before I invite the keynote presenter, Professor Dr. Mehdi Anwar, to make his presentation, I'd like to share with you a brief introduction of Dr. Anwar. Dr. Mehdi Anwar currently serves as a professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department of University of Connecticut, USA. As a Jefferson Science Fellow, he served as Special Advisor for Technology Transfer and Innovations in the Office of Intellectual Property Enforcement, Economic Bureau, US Department of State. He worked on a number of issues, including the United Nations High-Level Panel on Access to Medicines and a new investment facilitator tool, WIPO Match. As the Special Advisor for Technology Transfer and Innovation, he was invited to discuss technology transfer at a workshop on building bridges, sharing best practices on commercialization of technology in Warsaw, Poland, and even put together by US Embassy Warsaw in partnership with Swiss and Canadian embassies and several Polish institutions. At present, Dr. Anwar is assisting US Department of State and other US government organizations and the United Nations Office of the High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states to stand up the newly established UN Technology Bank for the least developed countries. He is also an SPIE fellow. With this, I'd like to request Mr. Mehdi to proceed with his presentation. Professor Mehdi Anwar.
Mr. Mahmoudul Haq, I call him Farooq Bhai. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Mr. Minister, Honorable Imam Mannan, and other dignitaries and attendees to this meeting. So only one thing I will change, that I was seconded to the United Nations, and that was, and that particular part ended in 2017 with the establishment of UN Technology Bank, so which is actually currently housed in Turkey. So let me share. I have to share screen. Can you see the screen? Can you see it?
Not yet. দেখো তো কি সমস্যা?
Because I am sharing my screen with you. Desktop. Share.
কই? হুম? I think it is on, but
you can't see it?
we don't see it. Anyone seeing it? Screen not visible.
No, we are not. Cannot see. Now is available.
Yes,
We
yes.
can
Now
see
it's
it now.
Now coming.
now. Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Okay. So let me start by sharing with you some of the highlights. That was published in a local newspaper. First of all, it says that if we have 5G, it's going to be extremely fast in the range of milliseconds. The smart connected devices collecting all data will change the way we live, work, and play. With the likelihood about 50 billion sensors connected worldwide, things are going to be tracking each and everything, and things are going to be slightly different. And also, the way we behave and the way we act in society is going to change, because the environment, the streetlights, everything is going to be controlled by all of these smart sensors. The mobile and the robotic machines, they'll be learning from themselves. We call machine learning. There's also a possibility that we'll have all of these self-driving cars and other stuff, traffic signals and so on. And there's a likelihood that will result in displaced workers. Aerial drones will be delivering packages that we already have seen happening nowadays. Surgeons will be operating from remote locations. High-precision robots will be taking care of manufacturing. And 3D holograms will be at each and every household, most possibly. But the most important line is the line between real and artificial experience will be blurred. The question then is, are we ready for it? So the question then is that how does it impact Bangladesh? And how does it impact our economy or our workforce? And this is the scary part, that it estimates that by 2030, over 800 million jobs could be lost to robotic automation. Does it impact Bangladesh? Yes, it does. And it says there's a possibility that 75% of jobs are at risk of being lost to automation and or artificial intelligence. So this is the risk factor, and this is why this particular meeting is so important, because this is a call to wake up and to have things done in a timely fashion. How will it impact? Short term, as an example, the garment factories and so on, it could be automation that could result in a reduction in our workforce. That may follow machine learning, decision making, that is, the machines will be learning and they will be making decisions. And that actually requires that we address our workforce readiness, or in other words, we assess the skill gaps. Long term, it is going to be our cyber-enabled solutions And my take is always, it's not that what we're going to lose. It is more, how do we prepare ourselves and take this as an opportunity? End of the day, it's all about communication. Communication, as an example, when you hear me, is what we call analog. But the way this particular analog voice or whatever is being transmitted is actually digital. That is a combination of all of these ones and zeros that we actually call data. So if you're talking about, as an example, a smart grid or a grid where power is supplied on demand, that is going to be simple, letting someone know that we need power and power is going to be delivered. And that requires a very smart and a very fast communication network. But the question that we ask, is our data secure? Can someone manipulate it? Can someone change it? What are the consequences if data is compromised? Then the question is going to be, if this is our data, where is it stored? This is what we call data localization. And that is going to be a big issue. If it is our food, we have it at our own home. But in this particular case where data, that is something virtual, the question is going to be, where is it located? Who owns it? Sharing or losing our data, does it impact our sovereignty? That's the question that needs to be asked. Then the more technological questions are that nowadays, if you look at the United States, a considerable amount of research funding is allocated to ensure that counterfeit electronics doesn't enter the supply chain, because it has adverse effect, not only in commerce, but worst case is that we actually can redesign and we actually can add it in the circuit. You have to understand, a flu virus, the diameter happens to be around 200 angstroms. The current technology node is 7. Or in other words, we are cutting it too close. But it has advantages. There's going to be a new modality for business, education, health, and our commerce is going to flourish. And we see in a very small scale the way bKash has actually facilitated the financial transactions in Bangladesh. E-learning is a totally different modality, not like something that we see nowadays where things are taught over Zoom, because e-learning is something that we call is asynchronous, and it is going to be something that is going to be learner-centric. Third thing, telemedicine. That is something rather important for our country because of the distance and the lack of infrastructure, and also agriculture. So with that, what are the challenges? And these challenges are actually very well known because it has been discussed quite often. Energy readiness, our communication infrastructure, and what is the other skill sets of our workforce, and how do we make them ready? How do we make them 4IR ready, if you want to say it that way? So this is some simple data that anyone can dig out. Our mobile subscription is actually pretty decent. We are about, out of about 100 people, out of 100, 80 has access to some kind of mobile cellular platform. If you look at broadband subscription, this is something where I think we need to get better, because as of 2017, the coverage was only about 5%. Then internet usage is actually close to what we call the average, and we see that we are in line with our neighbors. But that only reflects that the internet usage is most of the time using our mobile cellular platforms. And this is where, but one of the things, this is actually based upon habit, that we actually see that there's a complementarity between fixed broadband, if you're browsing or video streaming, versus what you call substitution for societal networks and music streaming and so on. And that is actually makes sense, and that is common sense. Now, this is something what we need to look at. I actually added Vietnam because a point that was actually raised during our prep meeting that was last week by Dr. Rashid Hamid, I think I'm saying it right. That is Vietnam. They got their independence also in 1971, but they're doing far better. And one of the reflection is, if you look at the broadband speed of 38 megabytes per second versus 22, mobile network and so on. And that is something that we need to look into, that what should be the policy and pricing decision to make broadband available to the mass. And that is going to be a challenge, because this is going to be where industry and the policymakers have to come together and actually make a sensible decision. So the question that we also need to ask, a little bit technical, that what is our latency? What is the optimum bandwidth requirement for 4IR? Where are we at this particular moment in time? And in the next 10 years, what should we do so that we are at that particular world average level or even better? Energy readiness, something comes up all the time, because we can always talk about having a fancy internet, but if you don't have reliable power to support it, then it's not going to operate. The way infrastructure is not going to work. So this is something that we have for United States as an example. The cost of electricity, and this is a comparison of the different sources of generation. Because at the end of the day, we will only adopt a generation that actually makes financial sense. So it's always the cost story that actually dictates the policy decision. So I was invited to make a presentation on the energy scenario, and that was in 2008. At that time, our per capita power consumption was about 140 kilowatt hour. Right now, in 2020, it stands at about 351 kilowatts hour. So we actually have doubled our power consumption, per capita power consumption. But if you look at, again, our comparison with Vietnam, their per capita power consumption is over 2,000 kilowatt hour, because that is what's required for all of these other activities that we envision. Again, this is my 2008 story, and that at that particular time, in 2005 and 6, our installed capacity was about 5,000 megawatts. And my understanding was that for 2025, we need to plan for 43,000 megawatt installed capacity. And based upon the resources that we have in our country, 76% could be from clean coal technologies. So next couple of slides will be a simple discussion of how do we price it? And as an example, we'll take that we would like to add 4,000 megawatts. And that was, again, at that particular time, was targeting 2014. So most of the time, people actually will carry out what we call levelized cost of energy. And based upon that particular comparison, we'll actually adopt a solution. So for solar, as an example, it will cost about $40 billion, and it requires an area of about 96 kilometers squared, or square kilometers, I'm sorry. So it is not a it is not a cost-effective solution for grid. It could be a nice one for small distributed generation and so on. But important aspect was we can actually make it usable if we can actually bring the price down to about $1 per watt. And that was something that was announced in 2009 by First Solar, because they brought the pricing down to about less than $1 per watt. But the question was that it was not silicon-based, it was cadmium. And cadmium poisons the environment. So this is not an environmentally feasible solution, though it is cheap. Fuel cell. So we talk about fuel cell because Connecticut, we have lots of fuel cell companies. So that's why it actually came about. Now, this is a possibility with about $3 million per megawatt. It's going to cost us about $12 billion. But now there are partnership possibilities that can actually bring the price down. And this is something that we need to look into. But the fun part was that the distribution is distributed. That actually gives us energy security. And there's also a byproduct called hydrogen, and that could be used in transportation as well. So we actually can get more out of it. Wind, with 700 plus kilometers of coastline, is that a possibility? The cost again for 400 megawatts is about 6 billion, with about 150 million per year for operation and maintenance. Coal, we have, I think, quite a large reserve of coal. And there is a possibility that if you use the appropriate technology, we actually can make it more efficient, about 60 or 65%. That is the clean coal technology. So there is that particular likelihood. So this picture is actually on the right. It's actually from from Mahakali on the way to Bonani. And that is actually what we call the green crude. And there's also a possibility. But again, these are financially, if they're viable or not, that is something that is to be seen. Coal-based solid oxide fuel cells, another possibility. So the question is going to be, the roadmap is always going to be cost. Solar PV, too expensive. Wind, higher transmission and distribution cost. Fuel cell, on-site generation, but again, going to be expensive. Solar, wind, if you put them together, that's the solution that we actually can think of. So this was our vision at that particular time, that by 2020, would like at least to have 500 kilowatt hour per capita goal, 500 kilowatt hour, which we are right now about 300 plus. So we are actually moving towards that target. Install capacity should be around 14,000 megawatt. I think right now, I believe it's about 11,000 plus megawatt. So again, we're a little shy, but we're moving forward. With coal reserve, there is a likelihood that we actually can use it for the next 49 years. And if we stretch it to clean coal, we actually can make it use a little bit longer. But our target should be about 2,000 kilowatt hour per capita. So this was my take on how to address the power scenario. And that actually requires that we locate all of these power stations at strategic locations coupled with industry so that we actually can make the most out of it. So recommendations. So, and again, I'm saying that in order for any generation to be adopted or favored, we need to carry out a levelized cost of energy. And at present, most of our generation is based upon some kind of fossil energy. And we need to get away from that particular practice. Now, as I said before, I don't see I see more it as an opportunity. And this is what I call the innovation economics. Why is it important? Because the way things are, artificial intelligence and machine learning will create jobs. But the way things are happening right now, it will happen particularly in developed economies, not in Bangladesh. So this is the time where we actually have to change and we have to come up with our own strategy that how do we avoid such a development. Upcoming technology is actually too important for Bangladesh. But important part is someone talking from the United States will not decide what Bangladesh has to do or Bangladesh can do. The solution has to come from within. Is it possible? Yes. If I go to A2I, the last time I saw, they actually have developed what they call a soil nutrient sensor. If I simply couple that with electronics, that is going to be the platform for what they call distributed sensing. And that actually is going to be something that is going to be for IR ready. So we have already started the practice, but it needs to be a little bit more consolidated so we actually can get something done with it. Great technology, delayed and not cost effective, is actually not appropriate technology. And this is the delayed part is highlighted because most of the time, whenever we are actually trying to get something done, we're about 4 years behind. Because whenever things are published, we actually say, this is something we need to do. But that simply implies they have already started working 4 years ahead. And that particular timeline needs to be reduced. So create our local market, promote indigenous innovation, but be aware of global priorities. That should be our slogan. Now, the recipe for the developed world, if you look at it, they already have done it. Because things are actually already, it exists. We simply have to pick and choose things that actually suits our purpose. It says, develop R&D, develop the talent, attract the talent. That's why we have seen all those international students coming to the United States and going to the West. Balance long and short-term R&D funding. Bring innovation culture. All of these things are already there and they have worked it out for us. What we simply need to do, we need to simply adopt it so it suits our purpose. But that is actually the question that needs to be asked, that how do we do it? United States, 2020, things started in 1862. And that was when Abraham Lincoln signed or established National Academy of Sciences. But there was still no interaction in between academia and industry or the government. And that had to wait for the Second World War when Manhattan Project started for the atom bomb. This is where government and academia came together out of necessity. Boston University was given funding about $160,000 so that they actually can develop the optics for spy planes. So whatever research R&D that we see in the West is actually for their national interest, either for support their military or for commercial gain. Question is going to be, what should be our strategy? Now, if we look at the funding picture, because this is what we need, definitely United States is at the forefront, followed by China. But if you look at the bottom, number 40, that's where you see Bangladesh as well. It says that Bangladesh has a research expenditure of about $5 billion. Fine. In the USA, how does it work? In 2016, expenditure was over $500 billion, followed by China, about 400. And then on the right, you actually see that how that particular funding was divvied up in what particular areas of research and development. What I'm saying is that is the West priority of the West. We have to identify what is their priority, what is our priority, but the process remains more or less the same. And this is actually, if you look at 2018 on the left, that was the R&D priorities of academia. Nanotechnology, 30% funding. Robotics and automation, about 24%. Big data, 25%. Fast forward, 2020. Information technologies, 31%. Followed by big data, 27%. What's the most important technologies in 2021? If we again look at it, is going to be information technology at 37%. So this is the two on the left is the academia. And if you look at industry with the greatest innovation by 2022, and what does it say? Energy 44%, sustainability 35%, and computing and IT 36%. So what I'm trying to say over here, that industry and academia, they share the same R&D priorities. There is a match. That's why they work together. And this is the same formality or the format that we need to implement in our country as well. So how should we do it? First of all, we need to find out what do we lack. This is what we call technology need assessment. Come up with what do we need. We need to develop the strategy and we have to establish the timeline. Important part is who's going to fund it. This is where we actually identify the funding pipelines. Are they going to be local? Is there international partnership? How do we get it done? But this is going to be an exercise, and that's why I wrote down the $90 million for USAID. That happened about 3 years back. But this was a promise that was made by Obama when he visited Egypt. It took about 6 or 7 years. But this is the timeline that we're talking about if we really would like to bring in big funding. And how do we do it? And that is where the respect for MOU comes in. This is where rewarding innovation comes in. This is where technology transfer and spin-off comes in. And this is what the industry in partnership with academia actually can achieve. So this is my definition of innovation, a process that identifies the needs and come up with solutions for identifying relevant partners and appropriate resources. We need to have all of these things together: partnership, idea, and funding as well. If we miss one, then we may have the best of ideas. It's not going to get done. The ideas could be big. This is an energy moonshot. That is, we are going to have what we call energy outside the atmosphere, up in the sky, being generated, and we can beam it down irrespective of location. Or it could be timely. That is a simply self-contained, what we call integrated energy solution. And this is something that we proposed at the University of Connecticut. Or it could be simple. And that is something like this, a simple water purifier. And this particular one, is interesting because this particular project was funded by a Bangladeshi entity, and the money came to the University of Connecticut. So that particular practice, industry supporting research, is already there, but somehow it is not happening locally. But the important aspect of this whole thing was, it is not the generation of potable water, but the challenge was this particular filter. And this is what we are saying, that this particular filter is actually the most costly part of it. So understanding was that if we actually give 3D printers to several households, let's say in the South where the water is brackish, they will actually print the filters. They will use whatever they need, and whatever overproduced, they will actually sell it. Then that actually is a good market to have. And that is what we call distributed manufacturing. So whenever we innovate, we need partners. And this is something that USPTO developed, which is actually an open source, they call it the Global Innovation Exchange. And if I'm innovating something, you can simply write it down. I'm working on something like this. And people from all over the world actually will respond, and you can form partnerships. Intellectual property. There's something rather important. I have worked on this one, especially on a WIPO match. And this one actually provides a platform to do IP search and exactly how to get assistance if I want to to protect my own innovation. And this one I don't think existed when ICDDRB came up with their ORSA line, because that would actually have been a good candidate to receive patent for humanity. So question is going to be, I think I hope I'm not taking too much time. What are the steps? These are simple recommendations, something to think about. Establish appropriate government entity to coordinate multi-agency, because this is not the job of one ministry. This is a multi-agency effort to promote STI in Bangladesh. Second, create an office we call the Prime Minister's Office of Science and Technology. That will actually coordinate all the research-related issues and advise the Prime Minister and take appropriate action. Invest a certain percentage of our GDP. And my recipe was that initially start with 0.1% for the first 5 years. And after the first 5, the government portion actually comes down to 0.05%, and the industry comes with the rest, 0.05%. Fund small and medium enterprises to bring innovation to market. Encourage partnership, because I think Mr. Mahmoudul Haq is already there working on SIACO, and that is actually a very good platform to have. But important aspect is I think the Prime Minister's Office has already approved something similar to establishing a center of excellence to promote South-South cooperation. And that is something we need to actually push forward so that it actually is up and running. Complete technology need assessment and develop a strategy targeting 2030. Create a pro-innovation reward policy, very important, and enact a policy that allows the innovators to retain their IP. And in this particular country, that is when exactly all the startups started after the enactment of BIDA Act. So that promotes innovation. It worked. If it worked, something we can also adopt. And this is a rather wordy slide that you can read at your own leisure. But what I'm trying to say that these are important issues to develop the skills, train our workforce, invest in technology and innovation, because otherwise, be careful that by 2030, we may actually lose 75% of our workforce. So I think Professor Mujumdar will be discussing this in detail, so I'll not go into it this much. But important part is revisit primary to tertiary education and reform, build societal awareness of 4IR, because that will actually have great impact, develop in short-term retraining of 4IR compliant workforce, because there is a possibility that some of our workers who are elsewhere, they will be coming back because their service will no longer be required, and that is going to be a social stress on our society. End of the day, it is going to be water that's going to be a challenge. Energy is going to be something that we still can look into. We don't have to produce gigawatt-sized generators. 3 kilowatt systems are good enough because they actually power cell towers. And that particular market is empty. No one is there. Communication, infrastructure. Dr. Asif Rashid will be discussing it. Security and blockchain. That is fun. And this is actually something that came up. And this was enacted by signed by Obama in 2013 and supposed to be implemented by 2019. And that is the drug track and trace. And it's not going to be confined to pharmaceutical goods. It's going to be everywhere. But that particular technology is not ready yet. That's the fun part. So we actually can get in this particular ballgame. But it requires all of these things: sensor development, big data, real-time authentication, you name it. So it's not that we are about 4 years behind now. We know what they want and what's missing. can we get in this particular ball game and identify partners to get it done. So partnership among universities, publicly funded research organizations, and industry generate new knowledge, technology and IP that, when combined with sound business plans, result in innovation. So I will end it with this. This was, they call it the food, energy, water nexus. That was an NSF motto. And I will add health to it. So food, energy, water, and health, that is going to be our target. That is going to be our challenge. And the only limitation that we have is our limitation of our own imagination. We can get anything done if we really would not want it to, because it always seems impossible until it is done. I didn't say it. It was Nelson Mandela. So with that, I will end my very long and I hope not so boring a presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mehdi. Actually, we'd like to congratulate you for the very comprehensive presentation, and it sets the tone for our panel discussions. Today, we have an extremely rich set of 7 panelists, which include government policy planners, leading industry leaders, researchers, academicians, and scientists, including Bangladeshi expatriates and our prospective technology partner from France. The panel discussions, we'd like to start with Dr. Hamid Rashid, Chief Development Research, UN, and Team Leader, UN 4IR Study. He will be sharing with us the assessment on global importance of 4IR and state of readiness of Bangladesh. Before I give the floor to Mr. Rashid, I'd like to share a brief background of Mr. Rashid. Mr. Rashid is the lead author of the UN flagship report, The World Economic Situation and Prospects. He was the lead author of the UN flagship publication, Frontier Technologies for Sustainable Development 2018, which analyzed macroeconomic and development impacts of rapid technological changes. Previously, he held the positions of Senior Advisor for Macroeconomic Policy in UNDESA and in UNDP's Bureau for Development Policy. He also served as the Director General for Multilateral Economic Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bangladesh. With this brief introduction, I would like Mr. Rashid to commence his discussions. Mr. Rashid.
Thank you, and good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great, thank you. Good morning from New York. I actually have only 4 slides, and I'll take 8 minutes to finish those 4 slides. And my perspectives, I would present the perspective of an economist, and they're mostly complementing what Dr. Anwar just said, but more importantly about what are the risks and how we can sort of approach it from an economic point of view. So the first the point that we need to keep in mind, the long-term economic growth always comes from technological change. And this is a story for the last 300 years that we saw. Almost all the countries that became prosperous, they harnessed technology, and that played a very important role that how they achieved economic development. And the first IR 300 years ago, a steam engine, basically that was augmentation of human muscle power. And subsequent industrial revolutions also did the same thing, mostly complementing and augmenting human strength, human capacity. But the 4IR is slightly different. This is basically human replacing technologies we're talking about. And this would have a fundamental impact about not only about what we do and how we do things, but overall the job market, employment, and everything that we know the world will fundamentally change. And this is where the fundamental difference between the previous technological choices that we made and the current technological change that we are anticipating or unfolding is that where the machines would be taking over the human functions of analytical function, cognitive function, even emotional intelligence. And that's where we have to sort of understand that this is not going to be the same that we had in the past. And that pace of change is rapid. And there's the pandemic that we're in the middle of right now. And if you look at the past pandemics of the last 1,000 years, pandemic always plays a very important role in accelerating technological change. And this will not be different this time. So the AI already was in the process for IR was already unfolding, but the pandemic would fundamentally shift the gear, and we'll go into the first gear and we'll see rapid changes. And that's where countries like Bangladesh need to be much more proactive to catch up. And that's why in my title, I showed that whether we are facing a slippery slope here. And because the reason that the pandemic would change the pace of technological change, because the risk with labor, human labor, is evident. Risk with supply chains are evident. How do we shorten the supply chain? How do we mitigate risk in production processes? How do we reduce dependence on human labor? All of this would come into play, and that would shape how we go forward. And that was already there, especially in Europe, in Germany, where the 4IR was coined, because there's a huge shortage of labor in Germany. And Germany realized that in order to stay competitive, they have to move to automation, massive automation, and robotics and AI. So the future of humanity is in AI. But one thing we have to be very clear, that AI is not a technology per se. It's an ecosystem. It's a data-based ecosystem that would underpin everything that we do. And the data would become the critical input in every aspect of human activities. Before we think about data, we think about data for research, data for writing a paper. But now the data would underpin research and innovation decisions, production decisions, distribution, how things should be distributed, how we would consume both goods and services, how we would enjoy leisure. For example, in the morning, first thing I look at my iPhone is the weather. And that determines what I would wear that day. And that determines where I would go and what I would do, what I would eat. Everything is determined by the data that I get on my phone. So data would be a very critical input to the entire decision-making processes, more importantly to the production processes. And that means in any production, if you have labor, capital, you have time, then another input, you add data. The cost of data would be critical to attain competitiveness of an economy. And this cost of data will also determine the country's competitive advantage vis-a-vis other countries. So if I'm competing with another country, if they have a lower cost of data, and lower cost of data is not just the price of data, how you acquire data, how you distribute the data, who can access the data, in what terms and conditions, all of them matter. And that cost of data would ultimately determine the cost of production. And the cost of production will determine your competitive advantage. And that's how countries would compete. And three aspects would determine the price of data or the cost of data. One is the size of the data pool, meaning that if you have a large economy with large number of people participating in the economic activities, using the smartphones, using other devices, broadband, that size would be a critical factor. Second would be the privacy of the data. You have to balance between privacy and security. If everything is made private, then it will not have the spillover effect. People will not be able to benefit. Businesses will not benefit from the data. If it's all open, then you have a serious concern of individual privacy. So you have to find a balance. And of course, the data security would be very important because you don't want the breach of data. So that could be like, if I'm producing something and if my data is available to my competitor, then I would not be able to compete. So that kind of security would be also important. So one good news for Bangladesh is, of course, that a country of this size with 160 million people would have a huge an advantage to start off if we can harness and harvest the data well. But that would require very good data governance. Without good data governance, we cannot achieve that goal. And this is basically seems like a very amorphous or sort of an undefined term, but this has to be concretized. Data governance is something which is different from internet governance, is different from other aspects of technology governance, and data governance would remain critical, and this is where we need to pay attention to. And the window to catch up with other countries is shrinking very quickly. We cannot just sit idle and say, okay, oh, we are having a lot of broadband, we're having a lot of internet penetration, and we're okay. That's not the case. Even if you have large internet penetration and broadband without data governance, the data is just useless byproducts of the activities that we do. Right now, we have all the internet penetration right now, and nobody's collecting the data in a meaningful way to harvest it and to inform production and distribution decisions, traffic decision, energy distribution, how or where we put priorities. So everything can be data-based, and this is where we need to go. So what can Bangladesh do? This is, of course, the interest of this seminar, webinar. And this is my third slide, and I have one more slide. So first, we have to come to some hard realization. And this would be very hard for us to, because we are used to doing things in certain ways, but those days are numbered. We have to move very quickly to a different mindset, different regime altogether. First is that we have to recognize that the age of this labor-intensive mass production is somehow coming to an end. Countries will no longer be competing just on cost of labor alone. That's a very hard realization for Bangladesh, given our labor force. We feel that we can just add more labor to the workforce. This is what we did with our ready-made garments sector. We competed in the global market. We got a market share, but that model is slowly coming to an end. And we have to realize that, and we have to be ready to go to the next step. And then also we need to understand that export-led growth model that we had in the past. Many countries grew following that model, like Korea's and China's of the world. But that model is also sort of shrinking. There'll be a lot more internal driven growth, domestic demand-driven growth, and we have to adjust to that fact. And related to the first 2 points, low production cost alone would not be enough to compete in the global market, because global consumers, wherever they are, there would be a lot more discerning consumers. If they're buying a shirt, they would want to know where the shirt was produced, not only where, at what cost, what is the amount of water that was used, amount of dye that was used, amount of every material that was used. All the information is available on a fingertip.
I think your first question has been answered.
For us to realize. And then other things that would change is that the buyers of the world, they would look into risk mitigation and sustainability issues, not just cost. So risk mitigation means supply chain risks. We have to make sure that we have better data and alternative contingency plans of how do we, if there's a supply shock somewhere, our fabrics are not coming, how do we have alternative arrangements, quick sort of response mechanism. And then, of course, you have to look at resource efficiency technologies much more effectively. So how do you ensure better utilization of resources, energy resources, water resources, everything else. And data can play a very important role. And another kind of technology that would become very, very relevant for countries like Bangladesh, what is known as augmented reality and virtual reality technologies. Because these technologies would determine, like, for example, Bangladesh can easily develop a gaming industry. A country like Belarus is the major exporter of video games. They earn about $20 billion a year just exporting video games. And these are done all small scale. And this is a technology that can create tremendous amount of jobs. But we're not tapping into that as yet. So we need to recognize that domestic growth would become very important. For example, our ready-made garments would need to start thinking, how do we clothe our own people better? How can they buy the clothes that we're now exporting to the rest of the world? And maybe we can create domestic demand in a way that would really help us move in that direction. And for that, my last slide is that we need to create a data-driven national innovation system. A system, not an entity, not a bureaucracy, but a process, a system that is critical to move forward. And let me just present the last slide and explain what I mean by a national innovation system. And I would differ with Dr. Anwar that let's not create more entities. Bureaucratic entities don't solve problems, they just create another layer. And it becomes much more complicated, much more overlapping mandates, and then it becomes a coordination challenge. As an economist, I see the coordination failure is a major challenge in any bureaucracy, and it becomes more intense when you create more entities. So first, objective of an innovation system would be to avoid policy fragmentation. There are way too many sectoral policies in the country, and then you don't need so many policies. Countries like Korea, if you go there, even if you went there 50 years back, they didn't have so many policies, but we have policies for everything, from fisheries policies to name it. Any sector, we have a policy. But we need an innovation system that connects all the dots. Second, we need the system that would connect the three key players: government, the industry, and the academia. Industry should be on the demand side, identifying the demands, what they need going forward, and how the government and the academia can support that, the industry. So the idea is a client orientation. The industry is the client here. They would place the demand and working in a loop together. And this innovation system would need to develop a data governance architecture to support the development of algorithms. We have a lot of data in Bangladesh, but we're not developing algorithms. We're not developing AR or VR technologies and other data technologies. Given the data availability in the country and the low cost of data, nobody cares about in Bangladesh about privacy. If I said I would use your data to determine what you would consume in terms of your need for, say, toothbrushes, nobody would object to that. So fine, this is good for me if the price goes down. And then use this technology like algorithms and the other the AI tools to identify demands of the industry in 5, 10, 15-year horizon. And industry being in the lead in terms of telling what they need. But they have to be also proactive. They can't be too comfortable being where they are right now. They have to be forward-looking, because they can be very profitable today, but doesn't mean they'll be profitable tomorrow. And that's how industries become obsolete. So we have to find it, encourage the industry to be more dynamic in that sense, that looking at the risk going forward and place the demand in the national innovation system. Critical element of national innovation system would be the free flow of information among the partners. Reduce the barriers to access to information and create a structure of dissemination. If there is an innovation in one part, it should go immediately to the other part. So what we call capture the synergies and the spillovers. There are a lot of spillovers, positive spillovers, that can be shared among all the actors. Then we also need to find a very good balance between indigenous innovation versus technological imports. Sometimes a national innovation system fails because they want to do everything domestically, but it's not cost effective to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's better to import a technology and improvise and basically customize it to local needs, and that can be a lot more cost effective. I always give the example, in the 70s, when I was a child, there was an industry in Bangladesh called Jinjira. Jinjira was the place where all the spare parts of the cars were available. Drivers used to tell me that, we'd have to go to Jinjira to bring the parts. But we killed that industry because there was an opportunity for us to create indigenous automobile industry. But we didn't, because at that time we said, no, we should open up. And there were ingenious technicians. They could fix anything. You took a car to Jinjira, they could dismantle it and put it back together, all with local know-how. So we have to find a good balance between what technology we import, and if necessary, restrict the import of certain technologies and encourage the technology import of other technology. And then also we have to find a good balance in the innovation system, balancing applied research versus basic research. Both are needed. But if we just go for basic research, some countries go for basic research more. Like if you look at the Swiss, they often really emphasize basic science. Whereas some other countries, they look for applied research more than basic research. So we have to find a balance, and this is what a national innovation system can do. And incentivize innovation with patent protection. Dr. Anwar mentioned that, but I think this is critical, because without a sufficient innovation, many innovators wouldn't want to go forward. The last issue, I would say, the financing issue, because financing can play a very critical role in fostering innovation. And there, we cannot just depend on the industry or depend on the government to provide funding. We have to create a culture of what is not known as venture capital culture. So you can seed money to encourage small, and there will be a lot of failures in innovation. Innovations, if you try 10 things, one would succeed. But venture capitalists should be able to take that risk. And this is a long history there in Silicon Valley and everywhere else. even in China right now, venture capital plays a very important role. And how do you mobilize that kind of venture capital is very critical to innovate and foster, especially in the AI environment. That is the most important thing I would say that we have to put in place. And that would be critical to improve the replicability of new technologies and scalability. Because we can have a small scale innovation, but it has to be replicable. It has to be scaled up. And that kind of mindset and that kind of a framework, not a bureaucracy, a process, a system in place, can take Bangladesh in the direction of catching up with other countries and take the full advantage of 4IR. I'm not as pessimistic as the MGI, McKinsey Global Institute, saying that 75% jobs will be lost. There is also a great opportunity for us to create many new jobs, and we should be aware of that. And AI should be used as the means to achieving that goal and achieve economic prosperity. I'll end here. Thank you.
But before that, let me have a brief introduction of Mr. Orlin. He joined Business France India team in September 2018 as the head of Industries and Clean Tech division. He has supported 450 plus companies on 5 continents in their international development project. He also held 7 positions within large French groups such as Safran, Orange, and Renault. With this brief introduction, I invite Mr. Orlin to make his presentation. Orlin. Orlin, you're still muted. Orlin, can you unmute yourself?
Could you hear me?
Yes, yes. Now we hear you, but we don't see your screen.
Actually, I to share the presentation. Normally, they should share it. I've sent to your technical support.
Okay. Yes. Now it's there. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So, in April 2015, the French government launched a path-breaking program, Industry du Futur, or Industry of the Future, to deploy digital technologies, transform companies and business models, and modernize production practices. The program made progress with strong support. In October 2017, Industry of the Future became French Fab. The new name was launched by Bruno Le Maire, Minister for the Economy and Finance, La French Fab for bringing together under the same banner the industrial ecosystem of France. So, Industry 4.0 can lead 20 to 30% productivity gains, allowing developed countries to challenge low-cost ones. La French Fab has built a comprehensive offer in all pillars of Industry 4.0 to tackle the challenge. Over 800 solution providers, startups, SMEs, and multinationals are offering top solutions in autonomous robots, cloud IoT, simulation, cybersecurity, and additive manufacturing. To understand better the ongoing industry revolution, let me give you some examples. Could you just move to the next slide, please? I will speak about the smart city. Many of today's environmental issues need to be solved inside cities. Urban areas for 17% of greenhouse gas emissions. Water and energy consumption, waste processing, mass transportation. These challenges dramatically add to the cities. Yeah, could you hear me? Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
La French Fab is pioneering smart solutions for them. Some smart cities projects are truly holistic. 3D Experience City, a cloud-based platform created by the French champion data system, helps them modelize, forecast, and manage together all dimensions of urban life. For example, the city of Singapore has adopted it. The next sector, so you can move to the next slide, the clean energy sector. Another example, so carbon-free industry is the greatest challenge of our time. La French Fab invests massively in solar, wind, and innovative renewable technologies. Paving the way for a clean world, France 94% of electricity from low carbon sources, mainly nuclear and hydropower. It is also the third most attractive market of renewables according to the latest Ernst & Young report on the issue. The next sector I would like to highlight is also the green mobility. So you can move to the next slide. So the French R&D labs, startups, SMEs, and multinationals are joining effort to develop the vehicles of the future. The French car industry and its several global players like PSA, Renault, or Valeo invest 6 billion euros every year on carbon-free and autonomous vehicles. Have 1 million electric or plug-in hybrid cars circulating on French roads by 2022. I would have to ask if you can click on the link, because I've got a video of less than 1 minute for one autonomous vehicle.
Yes, Pauline?
Yes,
Are
it's
there?
working because I couldn't see the screen. Yes?
Yes, this is there. We see the screen. This is agri-food industry in France.
Okay, because I had to click on the video, but it's okay. The other participant would share the presentation so they can see the video. So we got sustainable food. from organic farming to high-tech alternatives to plastic, the French food industry is staying ahead across the board. In order to feed 9 billion by 2050, with no more available agricultural land than we have today, the world food industry needs to undergo a revolution. Food is the first industrial sector in France, both in terms of jobs and turnover. The food revolution taking place today is a matter of biology, but also of food safety. Food quality is at the heart of consumers' concerns. French app Yuka is a pioneer in food traceability, allowing you to scan products in supermarkets to get information about source and quality as you shop. The food revolution is happening in our plates, in supermarkets, but also upstream in industry and agriculture. The food industry worldwide is responsible for 30% of greenhouse gas emissions and 70% of fresh water usage. France is taking a turn with its organic farming sector, experiencing constant growth. In 2018, 5,000 French farms gave up chemicals and synthetic fertilizers to turn to organic farming. So just to move to the last slide, we brought in September 2018 a delegation of 8 French industries and universities led by the French cluster of industry of agro-resources. This delegation met the Minister of Jute in Bangladesh, and they interacted with various associations, federations, universities, and Bangladeshi companies during the seminar on 24th September at the Agua Khan Foundation. So basically, it's operation. It's a kind of mission we can organize. And to conclude, the French Fab mission is eager to make synergy with companies in Bangladesh. We at Business France, a national agency supporting the international development at the French economy, seek to promote and facilitate French expertise in Bangladesh. With CCIFB, we assist our partner in Bangladesh. We assist in bridging French companies with local clients and partners for successful business synergies. So this is the kind of project we had in France with the autonomous vehicles. But I think
now we come to Dr. Asif Naimur Rashid. He is the Chief Information Officer, Robi Theatre Limited. He will be sharing with us his views on reliable internet connectivity with appropriate bandwidth. We'll also highlight the use of AI-based robotics and automations, especially in the 5G era, by leveraging low latency, high broadband, and massive machine-to-machine communications capabilities of telcos. With this, I invite Asif Rashid to make his presentation. Asif.
Yeah, Malva, you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mahmoud Bhai. Salam and a warm welcome to our most honorable chief guest, chair, wonderful keynote, fellow panelists in this webinar, as well as to the online audience gathered here today. I hope all are doing great. Not much to really add after what we have already heard, but I will try to briefly focus and talk about the role of connectivity and the 5G ecosystem for the success of 4IR, how technology is growing and in scale to be renamed as 4IR candidates, and how policies and standards are shaping up in our country. Now, thanks to this webinar, we definitely have by now a strong measure of what 4IR is and how it could change our future. Like many of us, I also do believe that 4IR is the fusion of logical, biological, physical, and digital worlds. Not necessarily in the same order, but essentially with the same components. And exactly here, it differs from the previous industrial revolutions. Now, 4IR is not really about technology, as we already heard in the call. It's more about, killing the asymmetry between demand and supply value chain, and in the process, bettering our lives. But again, at its core, there is technology, and more importantly, how we use it. In the space of just last 6 years, globally, there were around $700 billion invested in cloud and quantum computing, automation, IoT, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, and mixed reality. And it was done primarily to beef up the 4IR journey. And if we look forward, this investment is expected to create almost $4 trillion value in the global manufacturing industry, and it is quite on track for it. Now, with this massive investment, how does it really tally in terms of 4IR potential? Today, only 29%, around 29% of the global industries can say they have, some sort of 4IR projects deployed. The 41% in the small and medium scale pilots and mostly pep talks. And the remaining 30% have not done anything so far. So we can imagine that how much more investment is in the pipeline and how bigger the 4IR market is going to be in the next few years when this rest 71% starts rolling the dice. So with such scale of investment and commitment in 4IR field across all these diversified technologies, how does connectivity complement the rise of 4IR? Now, I'll start with a very small example. Let's take cloud computing. Cloud has been there for a while, but the current scale of use has made it a 4IR candidate. We know that the cloud is not really a storage anymore. This was initially a storage concept, but this is not a storage anymore. Today, it's rather a great source of artificial intelligence and machine learning based analytics that is offered as AaaS, or Analytics as a Service. At the same time, the rise of cloud-based video conferencing, like today's call, the multi-party gaming, as well as video content sharing and streaming has created multi-billion-dollar market all over the places. Now, of course, there is cloud, right? But how to maintain connectivity to this massive cloud? In order to maintain that connectivity, we need to have the assurance of high bandwidth, low latency, zero disruption internet. And this is where 4IR and 5G make a tag team. Now, not only cloud computing, almost all the 4IR use cases rely on seamless, low latency, high bandwidth internet or intranet. Let's take another example of AI-enabled robotics and industrial automation that we already heard in this call also. Now, in terms of productivity, we do hear that it can reduce manual intervention by 50% or more, which probably makes it perhaps the most important 4IR choice of technology. Now, what is the role of connectivity here? Let me be very specific. We would need a minimum data speed or peak data rate of 2 to 3.5 gigabit per second for a medium scale manufacturing use case. A one that probably uses a moderately complex machine learning algorithm. And it would also need a latency of 2 to 3 milliseconds and at an affordable price to serve. Now, that is almost 100 times the bandwidth that we have today or use today in most of our houses today in Bangladesh. So we can see that how much work to be done in the connectivity layer as we take a step forward to the 4IR journey. A little ahead of time, but the future of R&D industry could look quite different. And we know, we talk about it. Today it's based on low wage market, labor market. But down the line, 3 to 5 years, will it remain the same? Will not 3D printing come and make an impact? It could take a shot. American and ASEAN countries could take the first movers advantage by deploying 3D printers, giving 0 defects and 24 hours production efficiency. Now, we might think that 3D printing is expensive and probably not think too much about it today, but that's just today, and it might well be commoditized in near future, the way that we see the booming sensor market all over the places, especially on the Asian market. Now, 5G will again be a critical factor in handling the latency and massive machine-to-machine communication for the success of 3D printing. We talked about 0 latency or low latency. We will be talking about ultra reliable low latency when we will be having 5G in the market. Now that we see a very clear correlation between 4IR and 5G, let's just zoom out and see that how 5G really works, a slightly broader view. Now, interesting about 5G is, it's different. It's based on open architecture. It's different from the previous 2, 3, or 4Gs. When it comes to 5G operationalization, the role cannot be played by one party. It has to be the telecom operators, the fiber companies, the relevant regulatory bodies, and the policymakers. They have to come together. Now, countries who have already done 5G, they have deployed and set up the whole 5G portfolio that includes the new business models around 4IR, new value chains, new privacy rules, a more comprehensive device strategy, cyber resilience. We also see technology convergence because there is already 2G, 3G, 4G. So you have to have a technology convergence and interoperability for 5G to work properly. And they're doing it, keeping the 4IR at the core of their focus. And we also do hope that by next year, we will see the birth of 5G in Bangladesh as well. Now, coming back to the policies, it's still early days as we discussed, but we do see some tractions from an industry standpoint. There are some tractions from few corners. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there is a website called skills.gov.bd, implemented by A2I, ICT, division together with UNDP. And it's pretty good. When I went there, I tried to browse it, and I found that the team there, they work to identify the future skills required for 4IR. They map it to the business areas that we need for our country. They also evaluate the gaps and improvement areas, and they lay out relevant directives on how to proceed. I really found it pretty good beginning, I would say. Again, I went to the ICT portal and did a due diligence, and I found that the ICT Policy Gadget of 2018, specifically sections 1, 2, and 3, indicate that how the government is planning to leverage artificial intelligence, automation, interoperability of intelligence systems on a large scale. The paper also indicates that what are the granular activities required in each section and which department would be focusing on what aspects. But some of the things that what I figure out that there could be some things that where we need a little more focus. Number one, I think the anchoring and driving of 4IR policies need a central entity. We also heard from our fellow panelists about that. I do believe that's probably the way to go. To shed lights on the entry barriers for industries, yet to embrace 4IR. That's important. What are the entry barriers they would probably see, how to really help them overcome those. We have to prioritize the specific 4IR investment areas. We can't jump, with all guns blazing in every direction of 4IR. That probably would not work. So we need to see that what are the best return on investment areas for Bangladesh, and we need to prioritize those specific 4IR use cases, even in the policies. We have to have an upskilling plan. It doesn't happen overnight. We need to have a plan that probably is not only activity oriented, but also outcome oriented. That's important to keep in mind. There has to be an outcome oriented policy to understand that how the upskilling journey needs to take place. Also, we felt that it has to be an inclusive 4IR investment plan, to ensure it's an ecosystem game. We know that we must ensure that it is inclusive enough to make sure nobody is left out from this ecosystem. And also what we felt that if somebody is taking a first mover's advantage, somebody is taking some risk, we have to incentivize them, and that should be part of the policy as well. Now, to summarize, we need to put our strategy and execution excellence in the same line of sight for our preferred 4IR sectors, but with more compelling call to action. I think call to action is something that probably needs to be more underlined and put under focus if we are to really work as a nation to go about 4IR. And by doing so, if ever be there a digital divide in the world, courtesy to this 4IR, I see we have all the potential to end up on the better side of this divide. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Asif, for your presentation. Now let us hear Professor Satya Prasad Majumdar, Vice Chancellor of BIDA. He will be sharing with us his views on 4IR, identification of possible challenges local industry will face, assessment of technology gaps, and trained workforce. He will also share his view on the role of public universities to meet the need for innovation and research to market in line with 4IR. Before that, let me just share a brief introduction of Mr. Majumdar. He did his bachelor and master's in electrical and electronic engineering from BUET. He obtained his PhD in optical fiber communication engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur in 1993. He also served as a research fellow in Malaysia, Japan, and Delhi. He also worked as a consultant to the SARC and Dhaka Chamber of Commerce Industry. He sits on the board of Director of DPDC and BTCL for more than 10 years. With this brief introduction, I would like to invite Professor Satya Prasad Majumdar to share his views. Professor Satya Majumdar. Actually, only just one point that actually I think we are running behind the schedule. So we'll have to be a little on time, because as you know that for each and every panelist we have got 6 to 8 minutes, and I find that there's some overrun. So please, I think that because I would like to finish this within 8 o'clock. That's our within 9 o'clock. So that is our target, and so we'll have to be on time. Thank you very much, Mr. Satya.
Thank you, Sir Mahmoudullah. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity for presenting my ideas. Honorable Chief Guest of this today's seminar, His Excellency Mr. M.A. Mannan MP, Honorable Minister for Planning, Government of People's Republic of Bangladesh, Honorable Program Chair Mr. Muhammad Siratul Islam, Mr. Moderator Syed Mahmoudullah, distinguished keynote speaker, Honorable guests, Chief Guests, and others. Very good evening to all of you. Actually, I want to present my views very shortly. I would like to present our ability or our readiness to address the issues of collaboration of industry and academia in relation to fourth industry revolution. First of all, I would like to state that it is utmost important to integrate the research activities of different public and private universities by establishing a university network for research collaborations among the universities in the field of artificial intelligence, industrial robotics and automation, big data, textile sustainability, development of quality control of medical personnel protective equipment, etc. It is important to establish a fourth industry revolution related research institution by industry entrepreneurs as the skill development center for research and collaborations among the public universities and industries to support pilot research projects on the industrial automation and robotics relevant to 4IR. To entrust public universities and BUET with the responsibilities to take major initiatives for updating the course curriculum of tertiary level education of public and private university of Bangladesh following the guideline of University Grant Commission. And to consider Research and Innovation Center of BUET, Research and Innovation for Science and Engineering recently established in BUET, as a hub for industrial collaboration and to undertake research projects on different areas like artificial intelligence, data science, 5G, wireless networking, Internet of Things, smart grid technology, robotics and automation. And to undertake immediate research projects on textile sustainability as well as development of quality control of medical personal protective equipment with collaboration of DCCI and BIDA. I think we can develop a research laboratory which already developed in our university, which is called this Research on Innovation Center. And also we have a research lab, which is a robotics research lab, developed by the help of ICT Ministry of Bangladesh. And this joint effort of industry academia is very necessary to running this laboratory. So we have a collaborative research projects. And also we can have research lab for autonomous green vehicle. This will create facilities for electric, green energy-based sustainable innovation, artificial intelligence-based automatic traffic signal detection under various environmental conditions. Energy storage research will also be vital for combating this challenge. And to take appropriate policy to adopt 5G and Internet of Things in industrial applications and power system of Bangladesh. And it's also important to organize workshop through BIDA RISE Center for 3D printing of innovations, also support industries for AutoCAD design of commercial applications. A lot of small parts of different sectors are currently being manufactured by skilled human manpower in Bangladesh with the ability of high-end 3D printing facilities. People working in these sectors may become jobless, but this may not be happen completely because new skills can be required, and we can have training on facilities for human resource development. So RISE BIDA can play important role to develop new skills by training programs. Further, the BIDA RISE Center can support group research activities in big data analysis, artificial intelligence applications, and healthcare and other business. And I would like to mention that Center of Energy Studies is also working on solar PV panels, research on solar PV system, solar plant technology, autometering, fuel cell technology. And we have a laboratory which is supported by ITCOL, is working on different projects. And there is further Institute of Nuclear Power Engineering in BIDA, which can have projects or industry collaborations for power management and also for smart grid technology. And recently we have a Huawei BIDA Research Center. Huawei Technology Bangladesh Limited is giving support to BIDA. We are going to launch a 5G wireless network laboratory and IoT, and this may happen by middle of this month, and that can support industrial training programs and collaborative research projects. So with this few words, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Majumdar. So now we'll be talking to Ms. Rubana Haq. She's now on video. I also request all other participants kindly to just open your video so that we can have a group photo. Actually, we are just waiting for Ms. Rubana because she was not there. So we'd like to have at least a beautiful face that will add some color to the photograph. Ms. Rubana Haq is the first female president of Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association. She took over as president in 2019. She is the managing director of Mohammadi Group, having diversified interests in RMG, energy, media, real estate, and software exports. She sits on the board of Asian University for Women and also on Lafarge Holcim Cement as independent director. Ms. Rubana has a PhD degree in English literature from Jadavpur University. With this brief introduction, I would like to invite Dr. Rubana to share her views. Dr. Rubana.
Thank you very much for I cannot thank you for the embarrassing introduction because it takes away a lot of time also, but thank you anyway. Honorable Minister, Chairman, our very dear Chairman of BIDA, and of course, all the colleagues from the France Chamber of Commerce, and Industry, and of course, the speakers, the panelists. I must say that, listening to all our friends, especially the NRB friends, it has been absolutely delightful. Let me just begin by saying that as far as manufacturing goes and as far as low-end manufacturing goes, are we ready to actually face the challenges that 4IR poses? We're not. Currently, we're only about 8% of our job tasks in the sector, in the ready-made garment sector, is automated. The rest isn't. So we are sort of, hoping that by 2025, we'll be reaching 25%. But how do we transform the production chain? Number one, are our workers literate? No. Can we make them AI sufficient overnight? No, because the literacy levels are low. So something that Dr. Mehdi Anwar said rings a very strong bell. If we can actually increase our level of literacy and bring in coding, perhaps, and mathematics as compulsory subjects on primary level education, then we could have a change scenario. But as for now, we don't have that. So we can't really hope for an overnight transformation. But at the same time, a lot of onshoring is happening. At least 700 US companies have 12% onshoring. What do we do about it? Are we losing markets? Yes, there are lots of onshoring going on, but at the same time, there are critical issues like this development, this leapfrogging not being inclusive enough. For instance, at this point of time, when the sweater factory started importing a lot of jacquard machines, a lot of our workers just lost jobs. But was it a lot of workers? Or, in our own company, we couldn't give employment to around 2,000 workers, but they were re-employed in other factories. So, as much as McKinsey fears a lot of job losses, as much as World Economic Forum, and of course, in collaboration with UNDP, World Economic Forum, and A.T. Kearney, found the current garment manufacturing model facing a perfect storm of economic, social, and environmental dynamics. And of course, it's true that gradually this storm is also reshaping production and global value distribution, but it's also creating new opportunities. Is there any way that we can, instead of just talking about robotics, can we talk about cobots? Collaborative robots who would hold hands with human beings and of course take manufacturing to the next level, for sure. But the question is, are we investing in AI enough? I think, I'm not sure of the figure, but I think it's more than $150 billion, which is being put in just robotics engineering as a global investment, almost double of what it was in 2015. Where are we standing right now? From BGME, we tried with A2I, and we did tell them that, one of the most basic things to do would be just to walk through our factory floors and check out whether, what is it that we need? What is the software? What is the hardware do we need? We can have a lot of homegrown solutions at this point of time. We have enough intelligent engineers here, and a sync between academia and industry is absolutely needed. So if the French Chamber of Commerce and Industries wants to come forward to bridge the difference, we would be more than happy, because this is a very, very critical conversation we were having with A2I at one point. And I'm sorry to say, but it didn't really go where we expected. But A2I did a great job, but maybe we weren't also ready to open our doors. But while we do all this and while we talk about job losses, let's also think that there's also additive manufacturing. so 3D printing, as my other esteemed panelists had already mentioned, can be absolutely crucial for us, because we only need to just change the filament. I mean, even putting in, changing the filament, and we can actually have maybe spare parts printing. I mean, where in a world where bio organs are being manufactured by 3D printing, I don't think it's a huge issue to have our basics manufactured, printed by 3D printing. So there are opportunities, of course, but while we do all this, we also need to understand there has to be an overall convergence of everyone. And while we also think about everything, I was actually taking notes, but there are also dangers of learning curves, dangers of data security. And while we also think about the dangers, let's talk about the opportunity. While 75 million are supposed to be losing jobs, 133 million are supposed to be gaining. So there's always a danger, there's always a challenge, but there's always an opportunity. So I would say that, especially our friends from abroad who are sitting right there, it would be great to connect with all of you so that we can start an instant sync, because your wealth of data could help our industry seriously. Just to end with something that I think Dr. Rashid had said about augmented reality. Let's just inform the audience that, there's a very young startup, a New York-based startup. It's called Shimmy Technologies. So what they've done is they've brought in gaming to our workers to train them. So basically all the training modules are delivered through gaming. So these are interesting modules we can work with. Also, Dr. Anwar had talked about e-payments. Well, we have done a very effective pilot on e-wallet. But of course, the Bangladesh Bank and the ministry, the ICT ministry, has signed an IDTP platform engagement, which probably Bangladesh Bank is going into beta testing. If they do, BGMA would be happy to be a part of it. We've already expressed interest. So, let e-learning, e-payment, and of course, a complete sync with AI continue, because technology can only benefit us and create more opportunities for our workforce to do something else, perhaps some other skills. So reskilling must be right reskilling. And for that, we need a complete alignment of our NRBs, our experts here, and of course, worthy chambers of association like the French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much for your patience to hear me out.
Thank you, Mr. Ruwanahak. Actually, we are very open to all the suggestions. As a matter of fact, in our initiative for these 3 webinars, and we're also trying to tap our resources abroad. So I was thinking that the partnership that we are always talking about from the business, that there should be an effective partnership between academia, industry, and the government. And also, I like this to be reinforced by our expatriate professionals who has the relevant competence and expertise. So we have already, they're doing last 2, including this one, for e-commerce, and for this one, we have Dr. Mehdi for this time, but for the e-commerce, we had also 2 other Bangladeshi professionals working abroad. One is Dr. Mahbub, who was director of Telcordia, and also who served as the chief scientist at Pentagon. So he's also ready to work with us. And also a young professional, Judges Imam, who happens to be the global leader for Amazon in charge of Asia. So they have already committed their services to our joint initiatives. So anyway, thank you for kindly agreeing with our proposal, our initiative.
Yes, just one thing, if you allow, the reference was made to a virtual marketplace. I think it would be worthwhile for us to engage with our NRBs on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, thank you very much, Ms. Rubana. Now we come to our Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, Sezad Khan. He's the chairman, Business Initiative Leading Development, BUILD. Mr. Khan would be sharing with us his views on how to promote innovations and entrepreneurship in Bangladesh, especially in the context of 4IR. He will also share his views on how to improve the existing policy regime to face the challenges and harness the opportunities in the context of 4IR. Let me also share a little brief introduction of Mr. Khan. After doing his bachelor in business administration from Xavier University in Ohio, in 1992, he joined family business. He joined as the director of Wika Khan and Company, which is one of the oldest business conglomerates in Bangladesh, established in 1945. He was also very actively involved in setting up the group's mobile business under joint venture with Telecom Malaysia Bharat, which is now the Robi Axiata. So with this brief introduction, I invite Mr. Qasim Khan to share his views.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, please.
Good. Honorable Planning Minister, Honorable Chairman of BIDA, Honorable Ambassador, Mr. Riaz Hamidullah, President of the France-Bangladesh Chamber, keynote presenter, and fellow panelists, Assalamu alaikum. I think world is, we all know, moving through a very dynamic stage, and the COVID situation has accelerated the 4IR thinking process. I think that was discussed in the presentation. By the way, a lovely presentation by Dr. Mehdi, very insightful. If he can share that with us, would be lovely to have that. Given the situation of Bangladesh, I think we need to leapfrog and take this opportunity to transform Bangladesh into an information age country. I think we have the potentials, we have the will to do it, and we have the foundation. I think the digital network, which has been established over the period of 20 years, which I was part of it through Actel, my association with Actel, I think Bangladesh is well covered in terms of the cellular network, which the Honorable Prime Minister in 1996 opened the cellular market to foreign investment. So that's how we are now talking about digital Bangladesh. We are talking about 4IR. You know, because of that foundation created almost 30 years ago, we are able to talk about the next opportunities in information technology. I always talk about advantage Bangladesh. We have to actually understand what Bangladesh brings to the table. Demographic dividend, we have a very young population, which is very suitable for this kind of technology adoption and technology, if you say, educating the masses. So the opportunity to educate our workforce is there. 154 million users of mobile users and growing smartphone penetration, which is also a very good sign for Bangladesh. As I said, world-class infrastructure in terms of mobile technology. Maybe the broadband is not up to the mark given the situation. Very tech-savvy population. We are used to using technology. We are a technology-friendly country. Success of Robi, GP, Bcash, and recently Pathao gives us a good indication that Bangladeshi people are used to and convenient in using technology. There are challenges, definitely. I think the presentation also talked out about the challenges, lack of workforce, skilled workforce, lack of incentive to move into 4IR or technology upgradation at various sectors. There's a lack of awareness, lack of research, I think has been pointed out by all the panelists. Lack of technology governance is very important. There is no technological governance. There is no center or a ministry driving in the entire 4IR. It's on ad hoc basis. Some ministries are driving it. Some ministries are not aware of it. So there has to be a focal center or central point of focus from the government. Outdated education system. I think not only educating the students, but also educating the teachers is very important. You know, TOT, train the teachers, that is important. E-learning has come about. I think the presentation covered e-learning. Lack of mechanism to ensure the opportunities of 4IR. I think that's a critical issue where businesses or the government policies are failing. So there is a paradigm shift, no doubt. And are we ready? We are not ready. That's why we are having these kind of seminars, discussion. Providing incentive technology is very important. I think there is a mindset in the government that ICT is telecommunication and IT is computers. I think that mind shift has to combine. I think Robi's Dr. Asif Rashid is here. The telcos are heavily taxed, from their equipment to their businesses to their even corporate income tax that they give. It's not fair. So I think the equal playing field or level field has to be ensured for the entire spectrum called ICT, which covers 4IR. I think that's an issue the government needs to think deep. How do you sustain these mobile companies? Is very important to flourish your 4IR opportunities and the way forward. A high-powered national competitive strategic action process or planning needs to happen. I think there has been a suggestion to create a platform under the Prime Minister's office. I think it's an excellent proposal. I think Prime Minister herself, the honorable advisor, her son is driving this Digital Bangladesh under his directive. The 4IR institute can be established where the focus, as we know, in a developing country, especially in Bangladesh's context, whatever is driven by the Prime Minister is driven actually faster. So that reality we have to take into account. Under this strategic planning, I have certain suggestions. Develop a long-term policy on 4IR, modernize your curriculum system. Infrastructure development has to be, in a strategic manner, not on ad hoc basis. Industry academia collaboration is very important. Skilling, reskilling, and upskilling is extremely important. And in this respect, special attention has to be given on building a platform of collaboration between academia, innovators, industry, and government. I think this four stakeholders needs to come together and discuss, debate, invest, share ideas. Good news is that Dhaka Chamber has taken a leading role in creating an institute called Research and Innovation Bangladesh. The whole concept of this RNI is that you bring the researchers, the businesses, and the policy planners under one table, and researchers are linked with businesses, so research is funded. Funding is a major issue in Bangladesh. We don't fund research projects. You talk about other sectors, nothing is being funded by the businesses. It is the researcher who funds, maybe the industry or the university is funding it, but individual companies don't fund, which is a major bottleneck for Bangladesh's, call it industrial revolution, call it 4IR revolution. Unless you are talking with the researchers. There are so many universities in Bangladesh having so many researchers. We don't know which university is doing what research. So the whole idea of Dhaka Chambers Institute is to bring the researchers, create a database, share that with industry and the policy planners where the changes can be made. And it's a bridge between the academia, research, and business. I think that's a game changer. We hope it is successful, and we look forward to the support of all the people or stakeholders in the government and in the private sector. In BUILD, what we are doing, we are creating a public-private dialogue platform on 4IR. As you know, BUILD is business initiative leading development. It's a public-private dialogue platform. It's a secretariat to the Prime Minister's office under the Prime Minister's Private Sector Coordination Committee, is PSDPCC. It's called the PSDPCC. It's headed by the Honorable Principal Secretary, and BUILD is a secretariat where we do policy engineering, policy due diligence, policy reforms for all the sectors. So we are including 4IR in this platform for bringing more attention to the policy planners. I would not take much time. I think I have taken enough time, and those were my concluding remarks. And thank you again for having this. And I hope this continues so that we reach our goal and try to change whatever we can with our limited efforts. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shehzad Khan. And I think there's enough scope for all the chambers, especially Bill can take the initiative. We just started, and I think Bill is the platform where we can all join and take this forward. So at this stage, I'd like to invite Ambassador Riaz Hamidullah. He would be our last speaker in today's panel. But just let me share a brief background of Ambassador Riaz Hamidullah. Ambassador Riaz is a career diplomat, joined Bangladesh Foreign Service in 1995, and served, actually not good, is the most part of his career in multilateral economic diplomacy, including at Bangladesh Permanent Mission in New York, as Director Staff Secretariat, as Director General Europe and EU Affairs, as well as Director General Multilateral Economic Affairs. He is also quite known to the Bangladesh business sector, as he led a range of multilateral processes like Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, Bangladesh Sustainability Compact on RMG and textile industry, vis-a-vis US and EU, matters related to responsible business conduct, etc. He also anchors Bangladesh's engagement in Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar Economic Corridor. And since 2017, he has been serving as the focal man on Bangladesh engagements at the World Economic Forum. He served as the High Commissioner of Bangladesh to Sri Lanka and took over as the new ambassador of Bangladesh to the Netherlands in July this year. With this brief introduction, I'd like to invite Ambassador Riaz to share his views. Ambassador Riaz.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, sir, distinguished panelists, and I'm skipping to recognize everyone by name. I think a lot of things have been said, which I would have said. I've come in more from a practitioner's point of view, and also certain things that I have seen in Sri Lanka, and now I'm seeing in Netherlands, particularly in two places, Rotterdam and Eindhoven. I would say which can easily be characterized as the hub of experimentation in terms of 4IR applications and tools. I would not go, I'd very consciously skip any bit of raison d'etre or elaboration, and I'd rather try to bring in a few things in terms of validation at this stage of our conversation very precisely, and I'd consciously avoid any elaboration. First, the point which has come, I think it's very fair to ask that let the government take the lead and let the government recognize that we need to, what should be our approach to, on technology. Forget about 4IR, and I'm being very straightforward, because the appreciation of technology across projects, across strategies, across sectoral plans is not there as much as it should be. So can we, for example, and Honorable Minister, sir, may I submit, and I'm saying very candidly, that can we, what kind of public good approach can we really take about technology first and then 4IR? That's one. And then let's see how do we bring in a consortium, I mean, essentially a rainbow coalition with industry, academia, etc. And then would come the question, who would convene and coordinate? Whether should it be PMO, or do we go for any new institutional structure? But I know that it's very fair to see that in Bangladesh, to create a new institutional structure, there are both pluses and minuses. Second, can we have, for example, national technology mission? And I'm saying not a bit of mixing both policy and politics together. It's very important. In India, for example, in Vietnam, for example, they've taken their approach because right now we need to head on address all possible apprehensions, inhibitions, misperceptions, as also opportunities. Let's keep aside opportunities. 3 years I've been working with our government departments, ministries all together. And I say that with certain degree of conviction. I think it's very, very, very critical. This we cannot leave simply at the, with Planning Commission or PMO. It has to be a government approach altogether. And this should be about increased use of technological tools, applications, processes. On what? At the level of planning, implementation for every ministry, division, department. It should also include, for example, social welfare. where we are looking at all the, scores, thousands of orphanages, for example. Corresponding to that, we also need to harp, and I fully agree that 4IR is not about at all or any bit about ICT. It's also about ethics. It's also about geospatial technology, where simple solutions can really deliver magic at least possible cost. And also effectively, a key thing which I would really bring before everyone, can we really inbuilt incentives or concessions, for example. I'm looking at Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, for example, particularly as you're getting built, both fiscal and non-fiscal across the government system. And my specific point would be, for example, Honorable Minister, sir, when we are having ADB projects, annual development projects, is it possible to incentivize, for example, if X project goes for some innovative solutions, even to the extent of 1%, 5%, or 3%, can we sort of bring something to the program managers? Because it's very, very critical to my understanding to encourage adoption and adaptation of 4IR tools in applications and processes. Same time, it's equally important to, parallel to that, rapidly map or assess the key industries, let's say over the next 1 to 3 years' time, across both real, meaning manufacturing, and also service sectors in Bangladesh that use digital or automated processes technologies, and which can, in the short run, stand to benefit from enhanced or optimized use of some of the key 4IR tools, and etc. That should also bring in a very rapid projection of sectors and subsectors, which may then get impacted because of changes brought about the 4IR. I mean, we can, for example, look at manufacturing, logistics, education. There could be many others. Across national, regional, global supply and value chains. If this we get right, then again, in parallel, I think we can, it's time that over 1 to 2 years' time, for me, timeline is very critical for everything that we think or we try to do. Can we pilot few 4IR initiatives? And when I'm saying this, I would list down, for example, e-commerce, e-learning, e-agriculture, smart energy grid, smart logistics, fintech, even with application of IoT for devices. Let me give an example. Dhaka Wasa, we may not know. For example, past 3 years, someone came up and educated me, is using, for example, small IoT devices, and they're getting very interesting results. These are very cheap, as Dr. Mehdi Anwar has said. But why I'm saying pilot? Because the secretaries, I'm sorry, I'm naming, but those who are at the top, at the high echelons, they're really struggling in a kind of not so virtuous cycle. So we need to bring in small pilots where we can demonstrate results, build confidence, and then go for scaling. I would consciously skip the whole space of education, learning, and skills development, but with 2 points which I'd like to just leave without elaboration. When we are talking of workforce, I think the point which is really missing out is an agility of workforce. Obviously, readiness is one, but the agility in terms of planning, because the way the interface, the Future of Work report, if you see 2017 and 18, both from ILO and the World Economic Forum, tells us enormously. So when we are looking at our learning metrics, as also the skill set, actually, but the time lag, we'd be absolutely unable to match, because some of the jobs will be gone, some of the job streams will be gone, the new processes will be coming in. And corresponding to that, when we talk of skill orientation, I think the issue should be, how do we spark creativity and innovation at every stage of learning? At the moment, our school system from 1 to 10, I think, is not there. Much has been said about AI, blockchain, and tech and industrial strategy. My submission would be, I think we need to look at 4 things together. A national AI strategy, very broad as be, blockchain strategy, and then we mix it or blend it or compare it with our technological and industrial strategy, which should be a little longer, and then bring in suitably IP strategy, intellectual property. All 4 has to go together, or let's say 3 should go together and then converge or match with the national technological industrial strategy. Obviously, that would have to be accompanied by the data strategy. I mean, what do we do with data protection, privacy, and utilization? I'll come back again to government. I think it's very important because if the government really moves, much of things would really help. Then having said that, my submission to every one of us is that can government and private sector jointly assess, future readiness or technology proofness, if I may say, of all the existing policies, regulations, and standards, so that adoption, adaptation, and use of 4IR in Bangladesh can be sped up. This is a question I think we need to build up. And again, it can well be done within 6 to 12 months period. Building on to what I was saying, I would again submit very strongly that can we develop an attractive business case for 4IR applications, essentially premised on economic or business principles, to a range of, let's say, to start with next fiscal year with 5 to 10 large government departments or institutions. For example, LTED, roads, PWD, facilities, customs, police, Bangladesh Bank, Water Board, who then can actually champion. We need a lot of champions actually, and let the champions come from these departments where they would have functional and fiscal autonomy both to roll out some of the 4IR applications and tools. Again, go into a little more specific, when many of our private sector is using ERP, can some of the large departments that I have listed, for example, can they be encouraged to go for GRP? Let's say by end of 2021, which would be a fantastic testimony as Bangladesh steps into 2021, the celebration of 50 years of our liberation. Because this is again built on around the whole concept of championing. As I recognize the distinguished chairman of BIDA, for example, can BIDA look at the whole question of business competitiveness and logistics performance competitiveness together, and then see that where, for example, some of the 4IR so very smart, easily understandable applications and processes can be applied. One of the things I think which just came out a little off in our conversation is the SMEs. I think both Jinjira phenomena can also be combined with Bogura phenomena. And in saying that, I think all these almost hundreds and thousands of these SMEs actually offer a fantastic opportunity in terms of leapfrogging. My submission would be that can we, for example, hold their hand and educate them, walk them through in terms of adoption of some of the simplified 4IR tools and apps which they can develop, they can bring in, and then they can actually go to the next level. So essentially the issue is a little about mentoring. So one is about championing, the other is also about mentoring. To conclude, I think it will also be useful to bring in Planning Commission with all its divisions together, and also, for example, Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics. I'm saying this for some reason, to see that the whole question of the data proofing and also the technology proofing across both our data systems as also plans. Very final point would be, as I said, we recognize the presence of Honorable Minister here, sir, that when we're looking at three things, that's Bangladesh Vision 2041, Perspective Plan, and also the Delta Plan, for example. I'm saying this because I'm in Netherlands and I know why it matters. How these three, for example, correspond to and can benefit from use of some of the very simplified, easily adaptable 4IR tools, applications, and processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Elias, for your very excellent intervention, very practical approach to what we have been discussing. So, distinguished participants, all of you must be eagerly waiting to hear from our.
I need to excuse because I have to run for something else. Thank you. Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
So, all of you must be eagerly waiting to hear from our Chief Guest, Planning Minister, His Excellency Mr. M. Mannan. Before I invite him to enrich our discussions with his important contribution, I'd like to quickly sum up of what we have discussed so far. We have had a very rich discussions so far on the challenges facing us at the moment in the midst of an unprecedented pandemic. We had a convergence of views that all conceivable initiatives should be taken by us to overcome these challenges, to revive our economy, generate employment, and promote entrepreneurships, even as we try to mitigate specific health-related adverse impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen how different tools of 4IR contributed in managing the health emergency triggered by pandemic in countries like China, South Korea, and Taiwan. We have seen that in the initial phase of use of different tools of 4IR could cause loss of jobs, but job losses could be well compensated and increase the opportunities of new jobs if we could skillfully and profitably use these tools of 4IR to create new products, new industries, and new jobs. However, we would not be able to absorb this displaced workforce until and unless they are retrained in the skills as required by different technologies under 4IR. This warrants enhanced investments in science, technology, and innovations in the form of a more structured national strategy and approach. This will include a supportive education system, specialized skill and manpower development, creation of enabling infrastructure, building up of collaborative arrangements between public and private sectors, and incentivized policy to promote research and innovations and facilitate collaboration between and among academia and research institutions, both at home and abroad, including use of expertise and experience of our expatriate professionals, as and where appropriate, and the need to derive the full benefits from the synergy of a well-planned national, regional, and international cooperation. This strategy or approach also calls for strong and effective partnerships between different actors in the system, namely academia, research community, industry, and above all, the government. Without the ownership and leadership from the government, such strategy will not work. In today's discussions, we received recommendations which we try to group up in 5 broad categories. Number 1 was steps that are needed to prepare Bangladesh to benefit from 4IR. Required policy support, identification of key sectors for 4IR-driven growth, steps needed for coordination, resource mobilization, and incorporation of 4IR priorities in the country's planning, development, and investment prioritization, recommendations to enhance regional, multilateral, and international cooperation. We have picked up the above recommendations from today's discussions, and of course, this is quite rudimentary. This will have to be further fine-tuned and finalized in consultation with BIDA. And our discussions today, I believe, have covered some of the relevant grounds. I hope that future on our recommendation will be more comprehensively dealt with on these issues. We'd like to seek the support of the Honorable Chief Guest in formulating a national strategy and action plan for 4IR in line with Sustainable Development Goals 2030 and Vision 2041. We urge you kindly to sensitize your colleagues for the ministries of finance, education, science, technology, industries, and other relevant ministries which you would consider to be fit to work together to enable Bangladesh to fully benefit from the 4IR. Would appeal to you kindly to champion the cause of 4IR for Bangladesh. Before I hand over the floor to our chief guest, let me just share a brief background of the Honorable Minister. After graduation from Dhaka University, Mr. Abdul Mannan joined the former Civil Service of Pakistan cadre in 1974. He worked as Director General in the Prime Minister's Office and also as Director General in the NGO Affairs Bureau. He also served as a minister at a Geneva mission. He has been serving as the Member of Parliament since 2008 and served as the State Minister for Finance and Planning. He was appointed as the Minister for Finance on 7 January 2019. With this brief introduction, let me invite our chief guest to share his views. Sir, floor is yours.
Unmute. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sir Mahmudullah, for your kind words. And of course, I must pay my respect to everyone here. Very respected dignitaries, including our Vice Chancellor Bouet, our Ambassador from Netherlands, Chief of BGMEA, Abul Qasim Khan, in many roles in this country until now. And there are other people who have also, I can't name everyone, but to everyone, my deep respect. Of course, first of all, Dr. Mehdi Anwar from Connecticut, USA, for his very detailed paper on a subject about which I must own up. I must say honestly, I have very little idea. I'm just sort of a wunderkind, as they say in German. Just look at it and think about it. Can't have any idea what's happening. So you're talking about, I can feel like any semi sort of conscious person, something is happening. This is this kind of an awareness here in my mind, but I can't say what's happening. You're talking about 4 IR, that means there were 1 IR, 2 IR, 3 IR. Until I heard about 4 IR, I had no idea what those 1, 2, 3 were. Not only myself, even my forefathers, my grandparents, or all my forebears in this poor land called Bangla or Bengal or Bangladesh, we had no sense of what was happening. Let me be honest about this. So we are lucky, this time at least we are on the horizon of the 4 IR. We are not mainstreamers as far as I can feel, but we are out there in the crowd. That has been our lot all through the millennia for so many thousands of years, I think. I don't know for how long this will continue, because the bright ones among us like Satya Prasad and others, they make their day, then they go away to US, Canada, Australia, and live and contribute to a global economy, which is good, of course. This is what it's going to be. That is the only way we can make contributions. I don't think we can have a separate 4 IR in Bangladesh. That's I think, pipe dream, I would say. We are at the receiving end of technology. We have been all along. We are still at the receiving end. So sometimes as a layman, I think, what is the point? Let's learn, work hard and do our job. And what is our job? Our job is to work by hands and feet. Our job is to cultivate our land, attend to our office works, garments, rickshaws, or airplanes, whatever. Do our job in hand. That is what we should be doing. These are matters for superior people, technologically superior people. They are doing it. Whether we are with them or not makes no difference. They will do it. So as long as, what I'm trying to say, that if we are part of the humanity, there is a possibility that we may be at the receiving end. We may receive some fallout benefits, which is likely. That what should be the strategy that I would like to follow for this country. But of course, I cannot call all shots. We have our political boss, Prime Minister, the political party, who will decide what to do under these circumstances. So ladies and gentlemen, and Sir Mahmudullah, thank you for giving a very early warning on a matter which is very near, almost on our head. 4 IR and 5G, and maybe there are 6G or 7G, I can't say. If there is a 5G, there can be 6G also. If there is a 4 IR, there may be a 5 IR also. It's okay, let us not be intimidated by that. The present one, if it's around, let's welcome it, let's join it. We can't do it ourselves, that's for sure. Let us join it. That is what is my proposal or my submission to all of you here. Where are we? We are not even at the edge of this technological revolution that's taking place. We are almost at the end of a dark hole where we have been for the last thousands of years. So those among us who will make it technologically, academically, they will learn and join the humanity and contribute there. That's what I said earlier also. What's our future then? Our future, the way I see it is our future is to there are areas, what they call niche, in every economy, in every culture, or in every civilization, there is room for everyone. There is room for us there also, I think. And that room we must recognize and do what we can do best. Like at this moment, we are doing best in cutting and stitching and sewing and sending abroad. Beautiful job. We should be doing it even better than we are doing now. So this way, I think, finding our address, finding our corners, and doing a very honest, hardworking job rather than running after things which is beyond our capacity at this moment. I am a little pessimistic about this matter, the way the world is run. They would like us to be with them, for sure. We have to be there by our own efforts. Just like जो বাংলায় বলি গরিব আত্মীয় যখন ধনীর বাড়িতে যায় আত্মীয়ের বাড়িতে বারান্দায় ঘোরাফেরা করে ধনী আত্মীয় দরজা খুলে না সময় লাগে বসে বসে একবেলা খেয়ে পরে বাড়ি চলে যায় সন্ধ্যার পরে that what exactly is in a very dire situation this world we are in. Okay, but let us not be despondent, let us not lose heart. There is a place for us also in this whole business. So Sri Mahmudullah, thank you for once again flagging this issue before us. I'm sure people like Riyaz Hamidullah, the present generation people, Rubana Haq, Chief of BGMEA, yourself, you are the front, Abul Qasim Khan, you are all in the leading role. So you take over, go ahead, and our job is to pray for you, clap you ahead, and cheer you up, and let's enjoy a party time with the global human family. Thank you for organizing this. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangla.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your quite inspiring remarks. I mean, of course. No, actually, what we agree with you that actually in our last webinar we are saying that for Bangladesh we are of course as a receiving end, and we can't go for much innovative technology. You'll have to go for adaptive technology.
Yeah.
And the transition for this innovative technology to come to developing countries like Bangladesh takes time. We have seen it takes 5 to 10 years. But that's why actually we have involved our diaspora, our expatriate professionals like Mehdi Anwar, or Dr. Mahabub, or Jarjis. How do we bridge these gaps? Instead of 10 years, whether we can make it 2 years. So, and then I would like them to reinforce the national initiatives so that we can fast track all these issues. We can leapfrog this, where we are lagging behind. So thank you, Honorable Minister, for your, we take your direction. We can understand what is going on in your thinking. So I think we will be, anyway, after we have set with the BIDA, we'll be again trying to seek your support. We might come over to your office and we can have some time more to discuss this more intensively. So now we have come to the conclusion of our program. So now we would like to hear, before I invite the chair of today's event, Mr. Shirajul Islam, Executive Chairman BIDA, I just like to share a brief background of Mr. Shirajul Islam, who took over as the chairman, executive chairman of this Principal Agency for Investment Promotion and Facilitation on September 4, 2019. He's served for many years as Secretary, Minister of Health and Family Welfare and Secretary Election Commission before he joined as the Executive Chairman of BIDA. With this brief introduction, I'd like to invite today's chair to share his views. After the deliberation of the Honorable Chair, we have Director BIDA, Sheikh Hafizullah, who is the Project Director, Entrepreneurship Skill Development in BIDA, will offer vote of thanks. With this, I'd like to invite Honorable Chair to share your views. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Mahmudul Haq. Honorable Chief Guest, His Excellency Mr. Mannan MP, Honorable Minister for Planning, Government of Bangladesh, whom I found always very practical. I served him while I was a young officer. So I found him always practical, and you saw that he thinks very practical. Distinguished panelist, Professor Shattu Prasad Majumdar, Vice Chancellor of BUET, His Excellency Riyaz Hamidullah, who is also a very proactive ambassador I found when I joined BIDA. I found this is one of the most proactive government officer in the foreign ministry. Dr. Hamid Rashid, Dr. Mehdi Anwar, the keynote speaker. I must admit that the discussion that took place tonight was outstanding. We have had 3 webinars like this, including tonight's one. But tonight's one is, I think, totally different. All of you, Dr. Asif Naimur Rashid, Orlin Sastapunti, and Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, Dr. Banahog, all of you spoke so highly. I think it is not only enlightening for me, but I think it is of utmost importance at a time when we are facing the challenge of COVID-19. And also, despite the challenges, we are trying to keep up with our growth trajectory to become a middle-income country by 2024. Despite all the challenges, we are not giving it up. And we also want to achieve the sustainable goals, development goals by 2030, and the Honorable Prime Minister's vision to become a developed country by 2041. And I think this is very pertinent in the backdrop of all these facts. For 4th industrial revolution, post-COVID-19 entrepreneurship and skill development, I would like to share this sentiment to you. This is very important. And all of you try to present the important aspect of 4IR, the challenges of 4IR, and also, I think, to some extent, you also recommended the actions that is needed from the government, from the private sector, as well as from the industry. This is very important. It is, I don't know to what extent we are doing it, but we are speaking about this collaboration between government, industry, and the academia. But at least my experience, while I worked actively in the government, and also as executive chairman BIDA for 1 year, I don't find the effective collaboration between government, industry, and academia. Yes, maybe some specific institution like BUET and some of the private universities, they have some program to work with the private sector, but as a whole, it is not up to the expectation. I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we need this collaboration, very effective collaboration among the government, the academia, and the industry. Otherwise, just talking about what to do, how to do, that don't work. we need real engagement amongst ourselves. There has been a growing concern about job loss since the inception of the fourth industrial revolution. In this context, let me share a prediction made by McKinsey. It predicts that 800 million workers could be displaced in 42 countries, which is also mentioned by Dr. Mehdi Anwar, or a third of workforce because of this. But I don't like to be so pessimistic because there is always a ray of hope. There is always some silver lining in the cloud. Though it is easier to see how existing jobs may be lost to automation than it is to imagine how new ones may emerge sometimes in future. Creating jobs in the industrial economy has been primary means for increasing per capita income and addressing poverty. Nevertheless, technology like robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, blockchain, all these hard ideas. This is written for me, but I don't really know what these things are. So I don't like to talk before you about these things. So I am going to skip. Well, to answer this question, if yes, there is a question. Does it mean that the labor force now should have higher level skills than in the past? If yes, what type of skills should we focus on? What will be the role of education and training institution in developing those skills? This is really, really important. We must find out the answers to this question. To answer this question, we need first to understand how work has been transformed, especially with global value chain. Although most tasks of manufacturing industries can be automated, human interaction is still required. For example, greater manufacturing process automation would require greater monitoring and quality control. To carry out this role, humans will be needed. But we need to learn new skills that are focused on information and technology in order to leverage our benefits entirely under the able leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. This government is working relentlessly. Since the fourth industrial revolution is announced, this is quite important. It would no longer be healthy for us only to be labor intensive, but consider even computers require human intelligence and labor to be created and sustained. To build these high value capacities, we must also strive for highest and have the best opportunities for future member of our workforce. Perhaps this is what you talk about, upskilling the labor force. So this is very important. Upskilling of the labor force is very important. With the potential demographic dividend, Bangladesh is a heavily and densely populated country. Our country's individuals are vigilant and resilient, but we must honestly ask ourselves some hard questions because we are the guardians of the hopes and aspirations of our people. Did we give our young people the realistic resources they need to compete? Have we matched their skills with current industry needs? Have we invested in their education sufficiently? These are very hard questions, but we must answer these positively. Of course, there are some real hopes. In this year's budget, you know that government has enhanced the budget for education. But only budget will not really do. We need to know how to utilize this budget effectively. Just increasing the budget for a particular sector will not make that sector rich. We need to know how to utilize that budget. Well, we are also blessed to have among us the Honorable Minister for Planning. I'm going to humbly request Sir to take this first into account, as all other discussants, in fact, requested you, Sir, and to prepare a specific plan for overcoming the challenges of 4IR. Maybe, sir, your suggestion is also very pertinent that we cannot compete for all aspects of 4IR, but if we can really find some niches, that would do. But we have to find what is the real niche where we can have edge over other competing countries. So we have to find that. A tremendous effort is badly needed to reskill and reshape our large workforce to adapt better to changes. Emphasis has to be given for providing training to our workers who go abroad, neither in large number. Expatriate workers will face difficulties in the coming days otherwise. Mr. Riaz Hamidullah, he was asking whether BIDA can take lead in 4IRs in logistics with the private sector. BIDA is always ready to work with the private sector because my main stakeholders are the private sector. What I'm doing is for the private sector. So I believe that the leaders of private sectors will coming forward, and BIDA is ready to provide any support that we need for this. It's essential to link the industries we now have and the new ones we want in Bangladesh to foreign investment and the institutions that train the Bangladeshi workforce through mutually beneficial models. In this connection, what our moderator said, Mahmoudul Haq, was talking about is talent like Dr. Mehdi Anwar. I was just on way back home from my village home while he was presenting his keynote. I was spellbound, in fact. He was speaking so high, and I really feel proud that what Sar was also telling, that you are indirectly representing Bangladesh in the international arena. So this talent should be used. Mahmoudul was also referring to Mr. Georges. He gave a presentation in the second webinar. It was also something different. So we need to utilize your expertise in our country. And I believe that you'll be also very eager to provide your service to your motherland. Okay. The different branches of government, the private sector, trade bodies, and civil society organizations are also encouraged to organize and express their needs so that we can plan. Any delay will build obstacles to our economic objectives being achieved. Everyone talked about leapfrogging. Yes. I don't like to linger anymore. It's almost 10. That at least we are lagging behind 1 hour. We have taken 1 hour more than what we are supposed to. So before I finish, I must express my gratitude and thanks to the Honorable Chief Guest, to the keynote speaker to speak. It was really, really outstanding. And all other presenters and panelists who spoke really, really well and very practical. And if I do not thank Said Mahmoodul Haq, who basically organized this webinar, I'm just helping him to organize this. But it is his show. So I must thank him and his organization and all the members of France-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industries for organizing this webinar and collecting all the talents from around the world. And this is also perhaps the opportunity created by this pandemic, that we could talk to Dr. Mehdi Anwar, Mr. Hamid Rashid, and all others. So maybe had there been no pandemic, I might not have met this gentleman in my life, though it's virtual, but good enough that I know that someone from Bangladesh is working in the States and is shaping the American maybe technology, fourth IR. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and for listening me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your quite elaborate remarks. So thank you for covering all these aspects. Thank you for your nice words. So just we are about to finish. So before that, I invite Mr. A.K.M. Hafizullah Khan, Project Director, Entrepreneurship and Skill Development Project of BIDA, to offer vote of thanks. With his intervention, we'll end our program for today. Mr. Hafiz.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to you all. Respected Chair of today's event, Mr. Muhammad Sirajul Islam, Executive Chairman, Bangladesh Investment Development Authority. Honorable Chief Guest, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Mannan MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Planning, Government of Bangladesh. Distinguished moderator of the event, Mr. Said Mahmoodul Haq, President of CCIFB. Distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Mehdi Anwar, Professor of Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Connecticut, United States of America. Distinguished panelists, definitely it's a great honor and privilege for me to be called upon to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion of the webinar on post-COVID-19, challenges and opportunities for entrepreneurship and employment in the context of current status of skill development and readiness for fourth industrial revolution, 4IR. We are extremely grateful to the Honorable Minister of Planning Division, Government of Bangladesh, for being with us on this event. Sir, your gracious presence is a great source of inspiration for us. This event is a testimony of the commitment of our government to enhance regional, multilateral, and international cooperation to promote South-South cooperation and facilitate international partnerships at industry, academia, and research level also. I would like to thank Mr. Muhammad Sirajul Islam, our Honorable Executive Chairman of BIDA, for his continuous support and guidance throughout the webinar series. I convey my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Said Mahmoodul Haq, President of France-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industries, for taking the initiative to organize a series of 3 webinars. The first one of one of which was on post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities for entrepreneurship and employment in agro-based industry. The second one, e-commerce in Bangladesh. And today we are here, the last episode of this series on fourth industrial revolution and skill development in context to that. I would also like to thank all the keynote presenters and the panelists for their valuable contribution. Finally, I would like to put on record my deep appreciation to Total, Trade Service International, Dana Group, ACI Motors, Paragon Group, Instrumental Click, Commercial Bank of Ceylon, who supported this event. My sincere thanks goes to the broadcasting partner of the event, Dhaka Tribune, media partner Financial Express and Bonik Barta, and technical partner Unifox. And I thank you, all of you, for your kind attendance and your valuable contribution in this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So with the chairs, now chair could kindly conclude.
Thank you.
Just declare the.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Thank you. BIDA Jindabad. BIDA Jindabad.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Enjoy your life.
Thank you.
Maybe.
আরেকটা আছে এখন আমার আরেকটা আছে লাইন আপ আছে থ্যাংক ইউ
This is the opportunity given by pandemic, sir.
SOS message 3 bars souls thank you ভাই আপনার কংগ্রেচুলেশন আপনি কতদিন হলো এসেছেন বিসি মহোদয় বুয়েট
যে
আপনি কতদিন বুয়েটে
আনমিউট করে নেন আপনি
আনমিউট আছি না বুয়েট
আমি 25 জুন জয়েন করেছি
কবে
জুন মাসে
25 জুন
ও 2 মাস ওকে কংগ্রেচুলেশনস
during the pandemic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ji, assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thanks.
Dr. Haq যাচ্ছি, মাহমুদুল হক যাচ্ছি, থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thanks.